Next on The Truth is, we're going to talk about June. June, it's nice, it's warm, it's about to be July. That's when the real summer is. Good old June. Just kidding. We're going to talk about Gay June. That's right, Pride Month. It is Pride Month out there, people. Get your gay on. I bet you there's tons of homophobic dads that have this as the nightmare.
Son, we thought you wanted. Please don't get angry. Have faith in me. Say I shouldn't be a boy. I can't give up his life. It is him I love. Who's him? It is him.
Are you on that gay stuff?
Don't you try and tell me that got nothing to do with
He get all pissed off and gonna make my boy be a man. Gonna make him be a man. And he's wearing his mom's pantyhose. No, but seriously, we are gonna talk pride, okay? And in all seriousness, we're gonna talk about the importance of pride. What does pride actually stand for? Why is it being celebrated? And why should everyday Americans acknowledge it? We're also gonna talk to a friend of mine who is in the gay community, and we're gonna talk about the differences between the two main arguments. This is not a hate bash or a gay bash or a straight bash or any bash, because we're not bashing anything. We're just gonna be dialoguing, having a conversation, trying to find a common ground where two human beings could say, hey, we agree with this. Regardless of everything else, we agree with this. And I could at least say, you know what? I may not be in that community or in that lifestyle, but the persecution that they endured needs to be acknowledged. And it was wrong then, and it would be wrong now for anything like that to happen. So next on The Truth is, get your gay on. Or not, please don't. I mean, if you do, that's your choice. Stop.
Hey everybody, it's your boy Glenn Lawrence, and you're about to listen to an episode that I aired 2 years ago on The Truth Is podcast. I had an interview with my good friend John Tippins, who decided to come out a little later in life. And we wanted to talk about all those changes and experiences that he went through during that process. Since this episode aired last year, my son came out. And you know what? The world's still turning. Nothing is over. Everything is still good. Just because your child decides to make a choice that you wouldn't make doesn't make it wrong. Okay? Everybody gets to make their choices for themselves in their lives. All we could do as parents is support them, hope that they're making the best choices, help guide them, and try to protect them as best as we can from making bad decisions. Now, with that being said, as a parent, you're still protecting your kid. It's all you could do. So just like if a bully would pick on my son, whether he was straight or whatever, I'm still going to be that same protective parent. If a bully's going to come pick on my son because he dresses different or because he's gay, guess what? I'm still going to kick that bully's ass. And then I'm going to help my son up and tell him, now you kick that bully's ass. Because you know what? Bullying is not cool. So you don't have to like gay people or support their lifestyle. But if you threaten or harm them, there's always going to be a dad like me ready to kick your ass. Okay. I had to get my dad mode on. Sorry. Protective side of me coming out. It's my boy. All right? Sorry. Anywho, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Hope you guys are able to listen to it and learn from it. And maybe you want to hit me up and share your experiences with it. Maybe you have somebody that's gay. Maybe you are gay. I would love to hear your journey and your story, because you know what? Your life matters. And your struggles and what you went through is just as important as anybody else's. So stay tuned and check it out.
So like I told everybody not too long ago when I put out the little promo, it is Pride Month, and we are going to talk gay stuff. And I mean that in the most non-offensive way I could, because, I mean, gay people are happy people. The definition of gay means happy, joyful, right? That's what it's supposed to mean. That's what the dictionary said. I don't know who changed it if they did. But I have my good friend, like I've known John for many years. I've known him when he was getting ready to come out, you know?
Yeah.
He wasn't even out yet. He wasn't out and about. I mean, I knew, but like the only reason I knew is because he was the best dressed and smelling guy at church. And his shoe game was sick. Like, I mean, he color coordinated his shoes with his tie and his handkerchief. I don't know who does that, but he did. And I was like, man, he is way too fresh to death. And then he's like, oh, guess what? I'm coming out. I'm like, that's it right there. That was the X factor. But my buddy John is on with me. John, you there?
I'm here.
Say hello to the world.
Hey, world. How's it going?
So I'm interested in Pride Month. And the reason why I find it interesting is because understanding certain aspects of it, understanding the fact that there was a struggle.
Now, it wasn't just like what I'm led to believe or understand of it as, it was just bullying going on against, a certain group or those that are different. But it was actually, what really kind of ignited it was the police in New York and how they kind of just stormed through the inn there, right?
Mm-hmm. Stonewall.
Was manhandling everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. It was a while ago, but it was the Stonewall Inn, and there was police brutality, really, and you can kind of equate it to, I think, what a lot of people would understand, to the civil rights movement. Where looking back in history, you think it's just ridiculous that the color of someone's skin was going to cause as much issues as it did, but now it's like the same thing was happening and kind of still is happening today with people who are gay, bi, LGBTQ plus community, right? It's a very similar thing where just because someone is different than you, you're being, I'll use the term persecuted for a lack of better words. And we have Pride Month because the first Pride was a riot. It was a riot at Stonewall Inn where the police brutality was taking place, and they just had enough of it. They'd had enough of being pushed around and decided to stand up for themselves. So Pride Month now, you can kind of equate it. There's parades and there's a lot of scantily clad men and women walking around the street, and usually in most big cities. But it's way more than that. It's about not being ashamed of who you are and not allowing other folks to belittle you or to put you down. So it's kind of just standing up for yourself. And now it's, if I may continue, it's like it's gotten to really commercialized. And it's been 50 years this year since Stonewall. And there are a lot of people in the LGBTQ community who are kind of pushing back against the commercialization of it and really reaching out to companies and saying, if you're going to, fly the pride flag, or you're going to make money off of selling to gay people, or, saying that you're proud, then you have to do it all year long. We're kind of standing up for ourselves again and saying, hey, guess what? You don't get to do it just because, you're going to make a buck.
Yeah.
So it's kind of coming back around 50 years later, full circle, to where we are, we don't want to let the message get watered down like it tends to do,
I would say it's almost, you guys caught this momentum way, going into this. And, it's been 50 years. And the sad thing is, it's taken 50 years for people to feel even marginally comfortable with, with their lifestyle. Now,
yeah. Well, the thing is, that even 50 years later, the fact that even more than that, think of civil rights. We're still fighting those same battles with white supremacy and racism that's running rampant in our country. And it's going to take a lot more effort to actually be equal or be considered equal. There's still, I think, 18 states in the U.S. where you can get fired for being gay. You can be denied, public resources for being gay. 16. It's still 50 years later, still
too many. Should be 0 states, and it comes down to it. But okay, so here's a question. And this is the thing that probably bugs me more than anything is this redefining tolerance. Now, it's from what it seems is the push is you must accept me and everything that I say I am, or you are intolerant. And that's the exact opposite of what tolerance means. Tolerance is defined as being able to agree to disagree, basically. To have a disagreement, but have the respect for each other, that no ill will would happen to each other because of each other's disagreements.
Yeah. It's kind of like saying that, it's like saying, I don't like Glenn, but I tolerate him. It's tolerance. And I think that you're right. Tolerance nowadays has become this thing where it's we need to, teach tolerance, and we need to be a tolerant people. It's tolerance, it has a negative context to it. I think the word accepting is what most gay people would want, right? I don't want to be tolerated. I just want to be accepted. You don't have to agree with who I am or what I do or who I choose to love, but just accept it and move on.
Is
Because
there a
that means
difference between accepting it and acknowledging it? Because I could accept it, like as in the saying, like
you don't have to agree.
My buddy John. So what? That's his thing. That's between him and whatever. That has nothing to do with me. Now,
right.
Am I going to be the next guy to come out of the closet? No, I'm technically in the closet right now recording this, but and I will go out to use the bathroom sometime tonight. But anyways, that has nothing to do with the real closet. The question is like, so I could accept that's your choice for your life, right? I don't have to accept it as I'm okay, like I'm good with it, because it's almost like saying, like, let's say my brother, for instance, he's deep into some other narcotics and things, and that's his life.
You accept it as a fact. You don't have to endorse it.
I'm not comparing the two as bad. Not saying that I'm just using it as an analogy, okay? So, because he chooses to live his life that way, and he comes to me, he's like, hey, I like this. You have to accept this is my life, and this is what I'm going to do with it. Okay, cool. Doesn't mean I got to endorse it.
Right.
And I think it's where people kind of get lost. Like, does accepting it automatically mean endorsing it or promoting it? Or can accept it mean like, hey, I accept that that's the choice you make and I respect you and I love you the same as if you didn't make that choice or whatever it was? Can it be that, or does it have to be all or nothing? Because that's what I think the pushback is.
Yeah, I think acceptance is a broad term, just like tolerance. So it's kind of hard to define like what acceptance is, because who gets to define what it is? Do I get to define it as the one who's receiving acceptance, or is the person who's giving it to me get to define what acceptance is? That's a very difficult thing. We don't probably have time to dig into that, but it's like, I also want to say that, like, someone choosing to do, I know you said this isn't the same, but like someone choosing to do narcotics is not the same as someone, I didn't choose to be gay. As far as I'm aware, this was always a thing. And I just it took me 30 years to accept it. And as a gay man, it's like, I don't need everyone to agree or to like, endorse, I'll call it my lifestyle, or to endorse who I choose to love or any of those things. I don't care. Like, live your own life. But as soon as you start to put me into a box because of something that you believe to be true, that's when I have an issue with it. And I think that's not just sexuality. That goes for anything, like how people spend their money, religion, politics, whatever. It's like, as soon as I'm all for everyone having, the choice to make their own decisions, good or bad, and to emote themselves how they feel they need to, or express themselves how they feel they need to. But as soon as you point your finger at me and start telling me that I have to do it a certain way, that's what I have an issue with. And I think I
agree with you. And I think that's the same stance I have on this right now, is that I could accept that that's a choice that you make for yourself. And do I think everybody should be able to be married? I think everybody should be able to be married. Fine. That's all across the board. I think if, two guys want to get married, that's fine. The reason people are hung up on it, and this is where it irritates me with the Christian community, is that they're like, well, we're a nation founded under God. No, that was written after the Declaration, okay? This nation has never been a nation on Christian values. It
wasn't added into the money until the 20s, right?
Freedom of expression of religion, but it was never built on the foundation of a biblical principle. So they could toss that out the window, if you ask me, because you can't expect a nation to, quote unquote, govern themselves by God's, 10 commandments or whatnot, if they don't even acknowledge them themselves.
Right.
So it's like, you can't be mad at the laws in the world are not biblical if the governing body, it doesn't uphold the biblical standard.
Right. And you could go back to George Washington, who, if I have my facts correct, was a Freemason. And if you know anything about the Masons, they are like you could see them as a religious organization, but even most Christians consider it a cult.
Yeah, I was going to say, they were,
like,
I've watched National Treasure. I saw that movie. They have some hidden treasures.
Yeah.
But like, that's what the thing I'm looking at is like, okay, so I get it.
in my opinion, everybody should be able to be allowed to be married by law, equality all across the board. That's it. That's it. The issue is when individuals from different groups are saying, okay, I have this right. Yes, you do. Now you have to accept it and teach it. Well, no, I'm not going to accept something that I don't believe in.
Are we talking about
right for me?
What do you mean teach it? Like the laws that are being batted around now about teaching homosexuality in schools?
Well, not just that aspect. I really don't. I don't care about when it comes to defining an individual's
like
sexual identity.
Sex ed.
I don't have that an issue with that. My issue is this push. It seems like it's been more of a push of, you know what? We're going to teach this non-binary, gender fluid, could be guy, girl, guy, and then.
Well, let me
stuff.
Sure. Let me throw a little something out there. Like teaching it is, I think that there have always been gender fluid, non-binary people. I think that I think there are those people have always been around. And I think that, like you said at the beginning, we're now 50 years after Stonewall, just now being able to express themselves because they feel safe to do so. Do I think that we should go to children? And this is my own opinion, and I know several gay people who disagree with me. Should we be going into children and just saying that, hey, you can kind of be whatever gender you want? Like, maybe I think pushing that on them, like choose your gender. It's like, okay, well, how about you just let them be what they be and don't try to coerce them to make a decision when they're 6 years old about what gender they are. Like that's
the thing that bugs me about it.
I didn't masturbate until I was like 15. Like, I had no idea. Like,
It's like, why don't they just naturally come up to this on their own inclination? Like there's enough influences around them, from TV shows to what their friends like, what they're like, their home life. That all plays a role in developing who they are going to become. So, instead of teaching it in schools, why don't they allow them to develop it naturally? Because, your gender, in my opinion, is biological. You are born with the body parts you have, whether or not you like them or not. I mean, that's what you have.
That would be what you consider in the LGBTQ. Your sex is what you're born with, right? You're the physical parts that you have. Your gender is, I'm not speaking for all gay people. I'm just saying that I even have a hard time wrapping my head around that, right? Like I'm not being that person. Like from where I'm sitting, your sex is your genitalia. Your gender is how you express yourself as female or male.
Live with that. Yes, that is. So the thing that gets me.
So that we're using the right term.
Gender. I'm not assuming your gender. You just got tits, okay? And I know you're a girl, okay? I know what you got down there.
You present as female.
You are a female, okay? But if I call you ma'am, because that's what I do to, somebody that I don't know, and I see that they're the opposite sex. Hello, ma'am. Good morning, sir. Like if don't come at me for being rude.
Yeah, I think that there are some. It's going to take time, Glenn. It's going to take time for our society to get to a point where we can accept that there are people who can present themselves as female but want to identify as male. Like I said, I don't speak for all gays. I have a hard time wrapping my head around that too. But here's my thing. I'm not going to yuck your yums. If that's what you like and what you're into, guess what? That's fine, because that's for you. That's your decision. I don't have to be into it. I don't have to understand it. Mm-hmm. But I'm also not going to force you to behave a certain way to fit my paradigm.
Oh no,
because and I think that if everyone could just have that attitude, the world would be a much more peaceful place.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I'm with you 100%. If you want to be, live a certain lifestyle, that's your choice. If it doesn't, alter your work production at work, if it doesn't, cause like some natural catastrophe,
Right.
where we're going to World War 27, then fine, do you. My thing is just as much as I give you the freedom to do you and have your point of view and live your life, because I'm not infringing upon it. So don't do that to me, is my thing. Like, that's where I think it's a little rough for most people to accept. Like, it's like, we want you to accept, so you're going to accept. And if you don't accept it, we're going to call you this.
Yeah, we're going to call you bigoted.
Yeah.
Or we're going to call you something else. But I mean, I think the only, in my opinion, the only people that are or should be called bigoted, and I use this term very sharply because there's a big difference between someone who just doesn't know any better. I'm not going to call them a bigot, right? Because especially if they want to learn and want to be better. It's the people that will see someone who is very obviously transgender and will refuse to call them by the right pronouns. So they'll call him ma'am, she, lady, when they know that person is a transgender who presents himself as male. And that's a bigoted. That's a bigot to me. It's someone who knows better but chooses to be offensive or chooses to disregard someone.
You can't tell you might still be able to tell, like, oh, they got out of Adam's apple.
Well, I mean, but if I see someone with an Adam's apple, but they're walking around in like a sundress and have long blonde hair, I'm going to assume that they would prefer to be called
apple, a Adam's apple.
Right, but I'm going to assume, I'm not going to be a dick. I'm going to assume that person is wanting to live their lives as a female. So I'm going to call them ma'am and hey, nice lady. Like doing the opposite because you see the Adam's apple when everything else is presenting female. It's a dick move. Why would you do that?
I agree. I haven't come across that in my life. Like I
live in Capitol Hill in Seattle. I see it every day.
I haven't, I don't know if I did. I mean,
and some of your listeners, Glenn, may never come across that. But where I live in Seattle, it's like I live in the neighborhood. I live in the
respectful to the fact that you may not agree with them, but that's be respectful to the point.
It doesn't cost you anything to be nice.
Who they feel they are. And allow them to do that. It's not my place to tell anybody they're different,
Right.
Like
I said, it doesn't cost you anything to be nice and just to have the decency to you may never interact with that person again. And it is true that suicide rates in the LGBTQ community are up over the past few years. And I think that it is because part of the reason is because, it's a very tough time in our society right now. And there are people who are just kind of digging their heels in saying, I'm just not going to accept this. And I'm going to, push back every chance I get. But for what? It doesn't affect your life. It doesn't affect your choices. And we can talk about children, talk about what we're teaching them. And I'm not a lawmaker. I don't. The most I can do is call my representatives and make my opinions known, and I would encourage anyone to do that. Live your life and express your rights in that way. And we covered this a little bit, and I don't know that I would want our public school system, because we all know how great it is. I don't know if I want them to teach young kids about gender and non-binary and stuff there's part of that stuff should be learned at home.
The way they talk about sex.
And my sex ed was awful. But I do think that
I watched the porno for mine.
I do think that sex ed has a long way to go, and sex ed should be, because right now, and I grew up in Georgia, right? So the only kind of sex ed we got was abstinence. Guess what? It doesn't work. Abstinence teaching does not work, because when you're in poor in the middle of nowhere, Georgia, the only thing to do is have sex. And so my graduating class had 9 pregnant girls in it. Guess what? It didn't work. And I don't think that it works today. And I would rather you our schools teach kids about safe sex practices, about how diseases are transmitted, but teach, if you're going to teach it to straight people, teach it to gay people too. And my experience was that I learned about gay sex through trial and error, and that's no fun. I mean, you kind of know what to do, but you really don't know it.
Yeah.
We don't have to dig into that.
But, yeah, we'll say that for another day. But so here's the thing then, right? So we have this bridge. We see this bridge that we could walk across, where it's like, you know what? I will respect you and let you live your life. And, I'll be respectful and honoring to who you are. Because it ultimately, going biblically real quick, I believe that's what Jesus wanted anyways.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that for those super religious people want to like get real crazy with me because they're about to, they always recite John 3:16. Everybody knows John 3:16. I mean, you wrote it, John. Where, God so loved the world, gave his only begotten son, blah, blah, blah. But nobody reads John 17, where it says he comes to save the world, not to judge the world. So if Jesus, the perfect, holy, sinless person that came here to save the world, didn't come here to judge it, who are we sinners,
right?
People of fault and flaws? Where did we get the authority to judge?
Yeah, and let me let you in on a little secret. I can still consider myself a Christian. Like, I still believe in Jesus. So
why you wouldn't?
But there are a lot. You would not believe, Glenn, the number of people that I've met. I would say that in the gay community, at least in my circle of friends, there are way more people who would consider themselves Christians than you would think. It's like at least over 60% because they either grew up in a religious background, and like usually that's the case. And like I still believe in Jesus. I still subscribe to those things. But it's a very powerful thing to. There's maybe some books I can recommend to you, but it's a very powerful thing to realize. Like, so Jesus never mentioned it once, right?
I'm sorry.
What I'm saying is, like, Jesus never mentioned homosexuality once, and ultimately for me, what made point
then actually word for word verbatim.
Right. I think my point being that if he did mention, and maybe and I'm not a Greek scholar, so don't hold my feet to the flames for this. But if he did mention the times where it was mentioned, it was referring to the old Greek practices where men would sleep with boys, like carte blanche. No, let's not do that. That's not a thing that we should, as a society, should subscribe to. But for me personally, Glenn, it came down to this choice. I could either stay in the closet and I could probably find a nice girl to marry and could probably have kids and all that kind of stuff and just be miserable, or I could choose to be happy. That's what I chose. I chose to be happy. I chose to be gay, right? In the sense that I chose to come out of the closet and live my life as authentically as possible. And I will tell you that since making that decision, I've not been happier in my life ever.
I got a question about that. So you came out first to some close friends that we share.
Correct.
And then you posted about it.
So there's about a 2-year gap.
Yeah. Because from what I understand, and me and you have talked about this before, you were talking to some specific friends that we share about it and not knowing what, how to deal with it. You were battling with it.
Correct. I did not. I was admitting a truth about myself, but I did not know what to do with it. I did not know if I should, just keep praying and hoping and crying and grieving and all that kind of stuff, or if I should just actually just come out. Because that was the question. I'm either I'm going to come out or I'm going to continue rending my garments and I can't tell you how many times I just would cry myself to sleep, saying I just wish that I wasn't gay. I wish this wasn't the truth. Life would be so much easier if I weren't gay. And those friends convinced me lovingly to meet with them on occasion and to do some soul searching and some praying and to essentially conversion therapy, which has its own set of of problems that I don't want to dig into today, but like it's rough and tough and should not be allowed because it causes a lot more pain than it would ever produce any good. And that was the most painful like year and a half or 2 years of my life, where I was like, I'm broken. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of any of this. I don't know how Jesus could love me anyway. And that wasn't anyone's intention, but that was what I felt. That was my reality. And it came to a point where I was like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. And I'm either going to just bottle it up, push it down inside and just never let it come to the surface again and just put on a happy face, or I was going to choose to actually be happy. And that's what I chose. So 5 years ago on Pride Sunday, in Seattle where we had the parade, that's when I came out.
Yep.
So 5 years ago, almost to the day in a few weeks.
And so have you lost relationships and friendships?
That was my fear. What stopped me from coming out for so long was because, I was on worship teams. I was very involved in church, was that my life was just going to fall apart. I was going to lose all my friends. I was going to not have any support system, because that's what you hear in the media. And I know that it happens to a lot of people, and it's very regretful. They lose family members. I have 2 friends coming to mind right now whose parents like put a casket in the ground when they came out. Like terrible, terrible things. And those are all in the name of religion, right? Some terrible, terrible things. And I am very joyous in the fact that nothing happened. When I came out, and maybe it was that time when everyone knew, but I was like trying to find any other path but this one. Nothing happened. Didn't lose a single friend. I didn't receive a single negative message. I did get some like qualified love comments, being like, it's not my choice, but I love you anyway. That kind of thing, which is fine. Like, I get it. I was told in no uncertain terms that I wasn't going to be able to serve on a worship team anymore, but I knew that was going to happen. I knew that as soon as I pulled that trigger, that was over. And I had come to accept that. Well, and here's the funny thing about that is like, and here's a little bit of hypocrisy that I experienced even in some of my close friend groups. And I'll say not for the mutual friends that we have. This is never from their lips. This is from other people that were like, we knew that you were gay because you had told us, and that was okay. But as soon as you come out public, then we just can't have our people talking about it. So knowing that I'm gay and letting me serve, but as soon as it was public, then they didn't want to be ashamed for it. So that was
paint their perception for people.
Doesn't that suck? And those are the people that actually don't talk to anymore.
That's harsh.
Yeah.
Here's a question. And like, since we're on the spiritual dialogue.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I struggle. Okay. I know that God judges the heart of man, not necessarily the actions.
Yeah.
Because he referred to David as a man after his own heart. David just killed Bathsheba's dude because he was smashing her while he was out in the front line.
Correct. He had her husband killed.
He's like, I get it. You just murdered this dude guy and you're having an affair, but you're a man after my own heart. So to say that it would be easy to say that our actions are not necessarily always the say all of our
right.
So it's our heart. God judges our heart more than our actions.
Yeah. Listen, if I believed at any point in time, if I believed that me being gay would keep me out of heaven, like I can't even fathom a world where the God whom I believe in, who is kind and loving and just, would ever, like, I have 2 thoughts on this. One, would ever condemn someone for something that they can't help. It's like if someone in, like, I don't know, northern Russia or China who has never heard the gospel dies, they go to hell because they didn't choose to believe. That's a different ball of wax, but like it's the same. Like, how can a loving, just God let that happen? And I don't think that he would. I think that, in my personal belief, and I have no scripture to back this up, is that you die and then you're presented a choice. But like, there's no way that my Jesus is going, and he came to save the world, not just a select few. Like, not that everyone is saved just because they're in this world. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that, like, he loves me unconditionally.
Yeah, because like, okay, so what about
he came to save me too, even though I'm gay. I guess what I'm trying to say.
Here's the flip side. I'm gonna be on your argument here. So let's say, what about the glutton? The guy that's just a gluttonous glutton. You know, in the Bible it says it's a sin. Just don't be a glutton. And then what if he's a glutton and a drunk who commits adultery? But he still loves God, and he's, you know, maybe he's part of his church, you know, and he's the leader there, but he's lazy, and he's eats all the food, and he sleeps with everybody's wife and the church. Like, God could still let him in heaven.
Yeah, I think that there's a delineation that I want to make, because this is the eschatology that I choose to believe, is that I don't accept any callback to the Old Testament about being gay, because if that were the case, you have to bring in all the other laws too. You can't pick and choose. You don't get to cherry pick. And Jesus came so that the old may die away. So, you know, the 7 deadly sins, I think, is kind of what we're referring to. It's like, if you're a glutton, guess what? Jesus still loves you. If you're a drunk, Jesus still loves you. If you're adulterous, Jesus still loves you. If you're gay, Jesus still loves you.
Yeah, I'm not refusing that. But what I'm saying is, like, if they're going to hold the flames to one thing that they're identifying as a sin, then they have to be able to hold the flames to everything else that's been identified as quote unquote sin. And that means none of us are getting in.
Yeah, exactly.
Standard. Like, you might as well have been born a baby and then die.
And then die right away.
Like, all those women that are aborting babies, they're the only ones in heaven.
Right.
You know, so for me, like, the Bible says that we'll be surprised that in who we see there and who we don't see. Meaning, like, it's very well implied that a lot of these people that we believe are going to heaven won't. And a lot of people we thought were going to be in hell will be in heaven. So Adolf Hitler could be in heaven right now.
Could be. Who knows? Who knows what happened in the final moments? Like, you know, and like no one knows. And I don't presume to say that everybody who is professing to be a Christian today is going to, according to our beliefs, is going to be in heaven, because God judges the heart. And you can, you know what? Like, because, like, you know, I think it's in Revelations. It's like, you know, you profess to know me, but but you're lukewarm, so I'm spitting you out. Right? Like, I don't want to be a lukewarm person. So if anyone asks me about my religion, like, I'm not out there, like, you know, banging around with a pot saying like I'm a Christian, because A, no one does that. But B, if someone asks me, I'm just very upfront and honest about it, and I'm not apologetic. And that's how I have come to know a lot of good gay Christian men and women in this world who are just doing their best just to get by, because we have a church society who has chosen to not accept us, going back to acceptance, to not accept us, to try to marginalize us, sweep us under the rug, act as if we don't exist, and saying that you can't come to our sandbox and play with us unless you change your life. Yeah. Like, you're not going to say that to an addict. You're not going to say that to a glutton or a drunk person or whatever. As long as they're straight. But as soon as you bring out the sexuality part, like, why do you care who I sleep with? Why do you care? I don't understand how that is the one thing that you're going to hold on to. Like, what happens in my bedroom is none of your business. Yeah, just like, Glenn, I don't care. I don't care. You know what? And, like, I don't know why that's like that is like the subject that people try to cling to. And I think it's like I'm not an expert on the subject, but I think it's like this kind of like toxic masculinity thing that's being spread around now. Like, and, you know, it's a very popular thing to talk about social media.
Because, you know what? I'm actually getting ready to make a podcast about the death of masculinity. Okay. And the issue I have with it is not masculinity. It has nothing to do with being straight or gay or anything. It has characteristic attributes of a good man. So, you know,
let me tell you what, it exists in the gay community too. It's not just straight men.
No, it's not. It's not masculinity and being a good real man. Because the podcast is like, where are all the real men at? That's the question. It has nothing to do with sexuality. It has to do with characteristic and traits of an honorable man, which we don't have anymore. Whether they're a bunch of, you know, guys that are pretending to be men, that are acting the part but not really being men, or, you know, it's whatever. I think, the masculinity has gotten a bad rap because of our father's generation.
Yeah.
You know?
And I would also propose to you to take a look at what you consider masculinity, because what we consider masculine in the U.S., and you've been to other countries, is not how they portray masculinity in, say, Japan, where masculinity is portrayed as like a stoic calmness. And that's a hyper masculine trait for them. But also in America, if you consider like some like hyper masculinity to be like all the bravado of like, you know, Spanish men or people who are in Latin America, which to us seems over the top, but for them, that is the standard masculinity. Yeah, but that's the standard masculinity in those countries, but toxic masculinity, I think, it's not just it's in the gay world too, like it's everywhere. But I think it's this thought that if you're going to make me feel less of a man, quote unquote, right, less, whatever that means to you, then I'm going to come after you, and that's toxic. It's like, how about understanding that, like, we're not trying to make you feel like less of a man. We're just trying to, in like some recent experience I've had, it's like we're just trying to make you not be an asshole. Like,
I'm okay with that, but here's the flip side of that crap, because this is what irritates me. Like, so you know how much weight I've lost. You've known my journey in fitness, and you've seen the progress, and you see me at some of my greatest moments and some of my crappiest moments.
Yeah.
And I went to Planet Fitness, okay, to go work out. And they call it the no judgment zone, right? Cool. I'm in there, I'm trying to do my workout. And then they have this definition. It is me to a T, okay? Drinking out of a gallon jug of water. Yes. A gallon a day. How am I supposed to track it otherwise? You know, lifting, you know, really heavy weight in a tank top. Yes. Okay. And they called them a lunk or a lurk or a whatever.
Oh yeah, I've seen that in Planet Fitness. Yeah.
So it's funny because like they've defined what, you know, or their portrayal of toxic masculinity is someone who looks like me, but it's not me. Because I cry in the movie My Girl every time it comes on. You wanted to be a damn astronaut, okay? All right, Mary Poppins.
He needs his glasses.
Favorite movies of all times. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm masculine enough to say that. I'm good with myself.
I think that says a lot about inclusivity, because we know why they put that on there, right? They don't want the gym to be an intimidating place. And look, you've been to intimidating gyms where, like, if you're a new goer or you only go every so often or you're chubby or whatever, it can be a very intimidating place. Have they maybe gone too far with that? Yeah, but that's a great segue into like talk about inclusivity and being inclusive. And you think about that with the church. It's like, who in their right mind is going to go to a church that has, like, you know, in every 5 seconds you hear about how terrible gay people are. Well, guess what? You're probably not going to have a whole lot of gay people going to the church, and the very community that you're trying to outreach to wants nothing to do with you.
No, I get that.
Right?
I hear you. My thing is like, look, I think it's based on relationship. Okay? I think depending upon the relationship you have with an individual, like for instance, if I'm at the store and I see somebody else's kid act up, I'm not going to go over there and say anything to that kid or that parent. I'm let that kid act the fool. It ain't my kid. I don't have anything invested there, you know? And who am I to tell this person's kid to behave?
Or telling them how to parent.
No. Now, let's say if it's my nephew and I have a good relationship with my nephew and I see him acting a fool to his dad. Hey, don't talk to your dad that way. Okay? You have every right to be upset, but you don't have the right to talk to him that way. That's different because there's a relationship. I think if you have a beef with somebody or there's a difference there, it depends on how loving and understanding each other are with that relationship that allows that type of dialogue to take place.
Yeah, it is about relationship, and I think that I think the bridge that needs to be, the gap that needs to be bridged with a lot of Christians and a lot of gay people is just understanding. And it's not about, it might not even be about acceptance up front. It could be like, I'm willing to come to the table to even talk to you. Because there are a lot of organizations and a lot of churches who go to gay pride events and hold up signs that just say you're just going to hell, and they yell with megaphones, and they do just terrible things. And like that's where, like, we're not even talking about acceptance. I'm talking about, can you have a conversation? Can you hug someone? Can you? They're also, that's like a very dark picture, but there are also so many Christians who go to gay pride parades, and I see it all the time, especially with a few churches here in town, who's like this group of like Christian moms, and they just go around and hug people. And I've seen like the biggest, strongest, buffest, hottest gay guy who's like, walking around in a Speedo and flip flops break down in tears because like no one has taken the time to like love him or talk to him in that way, right? Because he had a bad experience coming out, and his family disowned him, and he misses his mom, but his mom won't take his calls. And like, to have that kind of like bond, it's like they're at least coming to the table willing to talk.
Well, I think a great bridge, and this kind of like will go to the end of our conversation here, is that Jesus left his disciples with two commandments: love God, put nobody before God, and love thy neighbor as I have loved you.
And I'll dumb that down and say, it's just love God and be nice.
God and love thy neighbor. Jesus, with that, to me, that means is like, as Jesus came here and did whatever it took, to save and be nice and, to show love to those that disagreed with him. That's the same action, whether you're straight, gay, you don't know what gender you are or not, whether you're gender solid or gender fluid, I don't know. Whatever it is, if you have a difference, still love on them. Because that's what, at the end of the day, that's what Jesus left us with. He didn't say fix everybody and conform them to your standard of righteous. He said love them. And I think love does mean, correction when, like, I love my son. I'm not going to let him act a fool all the time and be disrespectful. But love also means to acknowledge there's a difference and allow them to make that choice in their life, but be there for them, regardless whether you believe in it or not. You're still supposed to be there, because that's what true love is. It says love never fails. Love never boasts. Love never holds no regret or keep a record of wrongdoing. That's not just love between a husband and wife or whatever couple. That is genuine love for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, the Christian community could really do a good job and reread those scriptures. But also on the flip side, I understand that there's a lot of hurt and a lot of pain and a lot of anger on the gay community that have experienced and endured 50 years of, mistreatment and, feeling like they're the scum of the earth, and I could only sympathize because I haven't experienced myself. I would still hope that as much as they're fighting for equality, that they'll be willing to make sure that they're doing it out of love, not out of vengeance, or out of, I'm going to force this down your throat. You know, because that's where I think that it slowly could escalate to without any, you know, going back to its core concept of love.
Right. And I don't necessarily think that, I mean, there's a bill that's being proposed now called the Equality Act, and there are people on both extremes until in a political system, to the left and to the right. To extreme right wing people are like, you know, we don't want this because it means that you have to teach about gay sex in high school. Essentially what it kind of boils down to is one argument that I've heard. I'm like, okay, well, you know what you're doing is not working out so great either. So let's try something new, my opinion. But you also have people. But you also people
already know about it by gay sex.
By then, yeah,
they're into that thing. They already know about it.
Yeah. Then on the you know on the extreme left, it's like it's like kind of like ramming it down people's throat who A, don't understand. And B, it's like, I think the bill should be passed, because I think like in this nation, if we are paying taxes and we are living in the same cities and doing the same things, we should just get treated equally with the same protections that everybody else gets. Point blank. Right. And I don't want anybody out there to take offense to me saying those who pay taxes. I recognize there are undocumented immigrants that may or may not that also pay taxes, but there are people who also don't pay taxes. They should also be treated equally too. What I'm saying is that, you know, people who live in this country should be treated equal no matter who they love. And no matter what their gender solid or gender fluid identity is, like that shouldn't matter on the protections that this provides.
Definitely not matter on the protection and treatment of an individual.
Yeah.
What should not also matter is if people disagree with that, you know, worldview. And I think that's where people are having a beef. Is that, you know, I've talked to some people and they're like, you know what? Okay, you're gay, you get it. Yeah, you can marry whoever you want. Cool. Like, doesn't mean I have to accept it. Like,
what does it mean? It doesn't mean you have to like it.
Though,
you don't have to like it.
Like, does that mean you have to accept it? Like,
I think
the state already accepted it.
You don't have to like it. I don't whether you like that I can get married to whoever I want. I don't care. I also don't care that you can, I don't know, like adopt a bajillion kids. Like I don't care. I don't think people should care. And I think that we have a lot of people right now that care about something they shouldn't care about just because they want to have something to fight for. It's like,
I care about also, I think there's a difference between like, okay, white privilege is a thing. It's been hot button that people talk about. First of all, I've never experienced white privilege, and I'm pretty white. But I don't know what it is, because somebody needs to educate me. But because I've been harassed by police several times. Anyways, but the thing is, okay, I get it. Like, this is you. I respect you. Do you? All right, I'll fight. I'll be one of the first ones to stand up and fight for your treatment being equal as mine. But that doesn't mean like I'm endorsing. And that's where I think people are worried about is, does acceptance mean endorsement? And are they pushing for endorsement or equality?
I think that that's a great question, and I think that not everyone knows the answer to that. And I think that what the gay community is pushing for is equality. Now, whether you like us or not, whether you accept it or not, we just want the same thing as everybody else has. And it's 2019. Come on, like
seriously, 2019. You know. We are supposed to be, our diversity of this nation was supposed to be, a flag staff, something to guide people to. to say, hey, we could all come from different backgrounds and different lifestyles and different experiences, and this ridiculous melting pot of a nation we are is what makes us great.
It took us 45 years or something like that to get gay marriage, and everyone's like saying, "Oh my God, the sanctity of marriage is under attack." It's like the sanctity of marriage. What we have a TV show called 90 Day Fiance. What are you talking about, the sanctity of marriage?
I just think that's a ridiculous argument because there's been a lot of straight people that have fucked up marriage, if you ask me.
I mean, hello, my own parents, right? Like, you know, and really what that is about. And I think what this issue now is about equality and how a lot of Christians are like, no, this shouldn't happen, is because it's a fear of something. It's a fear of what you don't understand. You fear what you don't understand, and B, believing that if you're giving me something, I'm taking something away from you, right? If you give us marriage, then we're taking away what marriage means to you. It's like, no, you can believe about marriage, whatever you want. Like you can still believe about equality, however you want. We just want to at least have a conversation about us being treated equal, and you know, under law. And because I think law is relatively blind, and you know, it shouldn't matter. Like there's enough equality to go around. We don't take your equality to give us some.
Okay, what are your thoughts though? Like, let's say you see a chapel and you're like, it's a beautiful chapel.
Mm-hmm.
Want to get married there. But you go to the pastor and you're like, hey, want to get married here? Me and my fiance, you know.
Or when they say no because they don't do gay weddings. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's. I think it is.
Argue and be mad about and demand that they accept it and do it.
No, I think that if they don't, it's like asking, like, hey, if I were to go and ask someone to like be the preacher at my wedding, and they're like, no, I don't do gay ceremonies. Okay, I'll just go. I'll find somewhere else. I don't think that we should. I think there should be a very strict separation between church and state. I believe that should be the way that it is, and that you cannot force any like church or chapel or whatever to say, oh, you have to do that gay marriage if it like goes against the core of what that person's faith happens to be. Like, there are plenty of other places to get married. Now, there's a difference in that versus talk about wedding cakes, or what's in the media right now is the ability for someone to deny someone medical services if it goes against their religion. Meaning, like, if a transgender person had to go to the hospital, someone could say, oh, I'm not going to admit you, or oh, I'm not going to provide you care because it goes against my beliefs. You chose to go into a public profession. There are laws trying to be passed to make that under the guise of religious freedom, that they can make that choice. Now, inside of a church, inside of that religious atmosphere, whatever you decide is going to be the rules for you, that's fine. If you are in a public profession, if you serve the public, you should not be able to make that decision based off of your faith. Now, there's a caveat to that. Like, if there's also like called being a decent person. And so if there is a person at a grocery store who happens to be Muslim, you're not going to put them on like a meat slicer slicing ham, right? Like, be a decent person and have someone else do it. Like, you know what I mean? But if it's like, you know, if I walk into a store and say, hey, I want to buy that cupcake, and they're like, I don't serve gay people, that's discrimination. Mm-hmm. You chose to be open to the public, so I think the law should be, if you're open to the public, you have to serve the entire public, because that's exactly what happened, you know, in the 50s and 60s with black people. We serve everybody, but not you.
But like, what if, like, okay, let's say you know that this small mom and pop's business, right? And you know they're deep into their religious beliefs, and because every time you go in there, they have, you know, some, you know, Bethel music playing in the background.
Yeah.
And so, like, you just know where they stand. Do you feel that if you presented them with, you know, asking them to make you a cake for a wedding, do you feel that you are challenging them? Their faith? If
you're doing it knowingly, then, like, as a gay person, if I knew that they did not want to, they like were like, anti-gay, me personally, I would choose to go somewhere who wants my money.
Yeah.
Right now, if you're doing it out of spite, then you're an asshole.
It's going to not want your money.
Right, but if you're doing that just to prove a point and just to dig it in, then you're no better than anyone who's trying to prevent you to come here into the store from the first place.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is it the same? You know,
it's the opposite side of the coin. It's the opposite side of the same coin.
Thing is like, oh, because I'm allowed to force you to do something, I'm going to make you.
That's called
livelihood is gone.
Yeah, you're not being a decent person. How about you just take your money elsewhere and not put that person through all that strife? Now, like I think in the case of the guy who was like baking the cake, refused to bake the cake. I don't know all the details, but I think he might have been like the only bakery in town or something like that. Like gray area, right? Like
I don't know. The way I look at it is,
I mean, if I'm a businessman, a smart businessman, and I was choosing to not serve someone, I would be like, okay, well, that's $5,000. Like, just jack your prices up so they don't go there. Like I'm not saying that's right.
My gay cakes are the best, and since my gay cakes got that cream filling you like, that'd be an extra $10,000.
Extra $9.95 a minute for me working on this cake.
But no, like I see what you're saying. I don't think as a business you should have the right to refuse service to anybody, unless they're being, causing a disruptance or damage to your production of business. But I don't think just because you don't like gay people, you usually don't have to make them a cake. It's a cake.
Yeah, I mean that goes into gray area, but I think my point is like if you're in a religious sector, you kind of have the freedom based on religious views to deny people things like I'm not going to marry you or I'm not going to perform this kind of service or whatever. I think you
have that tax exempt status. Okay, you can get away with that.
Yeah, but if you're choosing to be in a profession that serves the public, then you have a responsibility to the public. And if you are denying anyone anything based off of race, religion, color, creed, sexual orientation, brown hair, blonde hair, whatever, I think that's discrimination, and that's what's wrong. And I think that's what there are a lot of bills. And I would just encourage you and your listeners to go and look up some of the bills that are going out. That are going out specifically against transgender people that are just trying to remove protections so that they can't go to a hospital if they needed to.
I think that's wrong. I want to dive into that myself. I will look into it because I will argue everybody.
I'll send you a link, Glenn, and maybe you can post it in like the notes. It's links to all the articles.
Podcasts too, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of dabbling and toying around with the idea of doing that. But I do not have anything official yet. But once I do, I'll let you know.
For sure. Hey, John, I appreciate this conversation. Like I always have loved you, buddy. You've been a bro to me for years. And, regardless of what differences we may have, I'm always going to be one of your biggest fans. Be right there with you whenever you need me. And that's just how friendship is supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be. So I really appreciate this time that you're sharing with me. And I just hope that whoever's listening actually can see that we could have a common ground. We could walk across this bridge and, it's not that big of an issue that it's put out to be.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't matter as much as people would have you believe that it matters, because at the end of the day, to quote Missy Elliott, don't worry about who I'm licking and sticking. You're just mad it's not yours.
On that note,
you can cut that out.
Go. John, thank you, buddy. I love you. Appreciate you. You have a good time. I'm going to listen to that song now.
All right. Bye, Glenn.
Bye-bye.